When I sat down to record this video, I had kind of an idea of where I was going to go. And then as soon as I hit that record button, I felt a little uncertain because a lot ended up coming up for me. And to be completely honest, this is not the first take because I've started and stopped more than a few times. And who knows where I will end up with this, but there's a lot going on. And I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about a lot that is going on. And the truth is, I'm not sure what I can do or say or share that is beneficial. However, there is something that I thought about that I shared a couple weeks ago in regards to, with everything going on, that it's important to allow ourselves to just kind of be and really be mindful of taking care of ourselves. And I wanted to kind of do like another video, not necessarily in the same regard to that, but somewhat in the same vein as that. So, welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. I'm really hoping I'm not going to start this video over. So please bear with me. This is not going to be a particularly inspiring or hopeful video, at least not for probably most people. Because to be honest, I'm not feeling particularly inspired or hopeful. What I have been feeling a lot recently, and I'm recording this on Monday, the 26th, after another execution. So what I have been feeling, and not just since then, what I have been feeling a lot of actually in periods for the last decade really, but especially in this last year, a little over a year, has been rage. And part of the reason that I wanted to talk about that idea of rage is because I know that for a lot of people watching this, rage and even anger can be a really challenging emotion. And there can be a variety of reasons for that. But for people that have experienced childhood trauma, and I've talked about this before in some different ways for some different reasons, but part of the reason for that is that as children, if we were able to allow ourselves to feel the level of anger and rage, it would create a situation that would be untenable. We wouldn't be able to navigate our lives. We would not be able to go on in our day-to-day lives in the way that we ultimately had to. So that is part of it, and that is part of survival. That is what our self-protective, our nervous system needed to learn to navigate in order to survive. So in large part, we had to learn how to dissociate from feelings of anger. So that's part of what is going on kind of below our consciousness. Now, that's not to say that people that experience childhood trauma never felt anger. And maybe even some people felt anger about what was happening to them. I'm not suggesting that that wasn't accessible or that that was something that nobody ever experienced. But even for those people, there was likely some aspect in which that was inhibited to a degree, or maybe there was anger, maybe even a lot of anger present in some aspects of your life, but maybe not in some more vulnerable areas of your life. And then for other people, and I would say that this is true particularly for females, those raised as female, anger was just generally unacceptable, period. And again, a lot of that is societal. But so anger ultimately was unacceptable for our nervous system, unacceptable societally speaking, and generally speaking, as children, we are taught that anger really isn't acceptable anyway, right? Like, don't be angry. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to yell. It's not okay to express anger. So, and like I said, I've done other videos on that, but it's important to recognize that reality. And so even if you are somebody that has felt anger, maybe even had challenges with anger, like you express anger, you maybe even express it in ways that are really unhealthy and inappropriate. You may have the ability to express anger, but doing it in ways that are unhealthy or inappropriate is still a problem with expressing anger. So it's still a problem with anger. So that problem with experiencing anger can be on a spectrum, right? We can have people that can never acknowledge that they're angry, and maybe they don't acknowledge it because they don't think that they actually feel anger, or maybe they don't acknowledge it because they think that it's not safe to acknowledge anger. So in talking about this aspect of this, in the context that we are in, so when we're talking about experiencing childhood trauma, and again, I've talked about this before, but I just want to bring it up in context. The reality is there's a lot to be angry about when you've experienced childhood trauma. There's a lot to be angry about. But when you have not been able to feel the anger, to experience the anger, to acknowledge that there's a lot to be angry about, and that's the most important piece, to acknowledge that there is a lot to be angry about in a way that is healthy. There is a lot of energy that is under the surface. It may be just right below the surface, or it may be way below the surface, but it is there. And when we are dealing with things, whether it is in our kind of immediate environment for whatever reason we might be dealing with it, or when we are in a societal circumstance in which there are things happening, in which there are a lot of things to be angry about, we are inundated with this constant energy of fear, of injustice, of things that rightfully might make us angry and fearful. And if we have difficulty with anger, No matter where you fall, you express it in ways that are not particularly healthy for you or for other people, or you can't acknowledge it to yourself that you're even angry. So wherever you might fall on that spectrum, it has a significant impact on you. It has an impact on your health. It has an impact on your emotional well-being. It has a profound impact on you. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am certainly not somebody who has this all figured out. I have been struggling with this because there has been a lot of rage. I'm smiling because I've had a couple of people share with me that it's kind of surprising to them to imagine me being filled with rage, because that's not a side of me that they tend to see very often. But there are things that can make me incredibly angry. And those things tend to be things related to injustice. So, okay, I'm going to try to stay on track here. So, no matter where you are in that spectrum, and I would say, especially if you're somebody that has difficulty acknowledging anger or even like difficulty with frustration or those kinds of things, and being able to name it, like maybe you try to talk yourself out of it for some reason. And it doesn't have to be specifically about what's going on. It could be about anything. It really is important to allow yourself to name it, to acknowledge it, to validate it. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we can do with that. So it really is important, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, to do that. And it can be really beneficial to be able to do that with somebody. It can also be beneficial to do that just on your own, but saying it out loud. Because if you think about it, as a child, whether you acknowledged anger or not about anything, you still kept, even if you were acknowledging to yourself that you were angry about something, and it could have been anything, you likely weren't really expressing that a whole lot outwardly, probably especially in a healthy way. So verbalizing, using your voice to actually say what you are angry or frustrated about is important. Use your vocal cords, energy, use your voice. So even if you're in a room by yourself, use your voice. It's important. Venting with somebody. I know sometimes venting, a lot of times people will say that, well, just bitching about something and not doing anything about it isn't helpful. And I think there can be some truth to that at times. I also think that venting is kind of like a pressure cooker. There needs to be an opportunity to release. And venting is an opportunity to release some of that pressure. And do we want to get into a situation in which all we are doing is venting all the time and not doing anything with that? Probably not. But part of what we can do with that So we can vent, and then we are intentional about doing something to take care of ourselves. Maybe we're intentional about gathering with people who are practicing some sort of healing space together, or volunteering in doing something together, taking a yoga class together. Like, there's different kinds of things, but doing something intentional to bring some sort of healing energy into that space as well. So that can be part of it. But expressing, acknowledging what you might be feeling, anger, frustration, disappointment, fear around, that is really important. And I know a lot of times people do feel like, well, if I don't have a solution, this is something that comes up a lot, I think, for people that have worked in particularly like corporate type settings. Like, if you don't have a solution, then don't complain about it. And I suppose there's some circumstances in which that can be beneficial to think about. But I think there are times when it's important to know that it's perfectly reasonable to express something without having to have a solution. And I will be honest with you that I think part of my challenge in creating these videos relatively recently, actually for a little while, has been that I sometimes feel like I don't have anything productive to be able to share. And I guess maybe I need to take a little bit of my own advice there. So just expressing what you're feeling is important, because, and it can be healing, because you spend so much of your life feeling some of those feelings, even if it was pushed down very far, in which you remain silent, in which you continued to deny your feelings. And if not full denial, you tried to tell yourself that it didn't matter, that it wasn't a big deal. And it was then, and it is now. So, in addition to using your voice, so as I said, just talking it out loud, whether it's to yourself or to somebody else, that can be part of it. If there's a song that really gets your energy going, and not necessarily like a happy song, that's maybe a song you could listen to afterward, but a song that really makes you feel energy, like that really makes you feel a sense of empowerment or strength, or even maybe helps you connect to anger. Particularly maybe if it's a collective sort of anger. So if you are somebody who has listened to some protest music at some point in your life, whether you're of a certain age, or maybe have just listened to some of that, those kinds of things really can be helpful, because you're also kind of connecting to the collective energy of that, which can help you feel the collective support of all of that. But get your body moving, feel it, stomp it out, move your arms, move your body, really feel that energy move through you. And I'm doing this very intentionally, like, feel it, let it go. Look like a crazy person. Let yourself just move that energy. If you want something that, if that just feels a little too much for you, really doing something that just feels like your energy is moving, there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube that you can find. Doing a quick, even like a 5-minute yoga flow where your body is just in this constant movement, but moving your body is important, and letting yourself feel that energy move through you. I know in that other video, I talked about grounding, and that is really, really important. This is, in a sense, kind of the opposite, and the grounding can be helpful after this. So really moving that energy through you, letting it go, doing feeling the energy, like washing it off of you, doing this with your arms and letting it literally kind of like fling off of you can be another thing that you can do. If you are in a place where you can allow yourself, where nobody's going to like check on you, make sure you're okay, unless you're okay with that, let yourself yell, scream. That's okay. That can be incredibly powerful to do. Sing. If you're listening to that music, let yourself scream at the top of your lungs, or scream too, at the top of your lungs. Releasing that energy, because if you've watched my videos where I've talked about the Jack in the Box and how when we don't allow ourselves to feel, that energy continues to build up. Same thing. Anger is part of that. And so when we can do some of these things, especially with anger, because anger has a very intense energy with it, we need to let it escape. We need to let it move through us. So things that really help that your body move in space, to let it go, to use your voice, to release some of that energy. And I know for some of you that can feel really scary. So something that's more like yoga or Tai Chi, or even just kind of like maybe stretching, like really like laying down and fully stretching from your fingertips to your toe tips, a full body stretch, and letting out an audible sound, full body sound, letting it out. Maybe that's some place to start. Letting an exhale with a loud sigh. Maybe start there. It's important to let yourself release the energy. We are in a time that most of us watching have never experienced before. And I know in parts of the world, they have experienced horrendous things. But the people watching this video, because most of the people watching this video are in the US and mostly in English-speaking countries, this is not something and of an age in which we have ever experienced before. And I know people in other countries are, even just because of what's happening in the US, are feeling a lot of this. And we don't know what is to come. And there is so much familiarity, even though we've not lived through something like this before. The uncertainty, the lies, the support of those around us, of the brutality and the harm that is being done. It's a lot to live with, to live through on an everyday basis. And we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. And when we have the capacity, doing what we might be able to do to help in our communities for others, whatever that might look like. But first and foremost, we have to take care of ourselves. And that is a reminder for me as well, because as I said, I am continuing to practice as well. Thank you for being here. We're in this together. Together we heal, whether it's from childhood trauma or the ongoing trauma of a world that feels eerily similar to everything we know about the 1930s. Thank you for being here. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.